for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, thanks for stopping by Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. This is episode 5 of the Libertarian Lowdown. I've got Matt Wright from Muddied Waters Media coming on. He co-hosts a show over there with Spike Cohen. You guys should remember Spike. He was my first Libertarian Lowdown guest. They've gotten progressively better since Spike was on. So I know no one wants to believe that it can get better after Spike, but you know, Spike set a really high bar, and so far everyone's just blowing it completely out of the water. So I have no doubt that Matt will do that tonight. We know that Matt and Spike's show is quite popular, and to be honest with you, when they do their spot for Anchor, it's literally one of the funniest things I've ever heard when it comes to a promotional video. So if you haven't checked them out over on their different platforms, please make sure that you do, because their content is excellent and they have some of the driest and best humor that there is. While you're here, please check out the merchandise. I have my own stuff, and I also have coffee, which I don't know. I'm probably gonna have to ask Matt about why he doesn't drink coffee anymore, because he talks about it a lot on his own show, which is Writer's Block. They drink mud water. I don't know. It must have something to do with with the name of their network. But anyway, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment Muhlenberg roast. This is some of the best coffee you will ever have, and it's got all the caffeine, Matt, by the way. So, and I have these really cool slate coasters that are absolutely phenomenal. And also, I would like to tell you, I don't have sponsors yet per se, but I do have a couple of friends that run some businesses. So I want you to go check out Laura Rear at Rocky Mountain Health and Healing. Rocky Mountain Health and Healing. She's got a great website. If you just look her up, Laura Rear, Rocky Mountain Health and Healing. She does telemed. She's a nurse practitioner, and she has a doctorate. She does telemed. She's all about medical freedom. She practices in Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana. I'm encouraging her to grow that as it goes. And then also check out Arden Sales Group if you're the kind of person who has the 2 seasons that Minnesota has, which is mosquito and winter. That we have mosquito season and winter season. And some of you would refer to it here in Minnesota as road construction and winter, but mostly it's mosquito season and winter. So Bull says he was the first. No, Bull, you were a candidate. I didn't have you on for Libertarian Lowdown, by the way, Bull. So my Libertarian Lowdown series started with Spike. Might have to have you on for Libertarian Lowdown, but you were on as a candidate, just to straighten you out there, Bull. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. Matt, I'm going to bring you in, and instead of trying to tell everybody about you, I'm going to just have you tell everybody about you. Thanks for being here tonight.
No, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me on. It's good to be here, and I'm glad that we have a chance to do this. We talked about it for a while, and we finally got a day that worked.
Well, yeah, and then I forgot that we picked today. So because
like, do you have any dates coming up? And I looked, I was like, you're on my calendar for tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm so glad I sent that message, because you would have been sitting here a lot longer. So yeah, not only did we have a day picked, but we also had the time wrong on one of our ends, and he was sitting in the studio green room for about 45 minutes waiting for me to show up. So I
I was just,
interrupted him.
I would I was just sitting there playing games on my phone, and I gotta let you know, I drank a lot of coffee. I drink more coffee than an average human probably should every day. And then after I'm done drinking coffee, I switch over to energy drinks. Um, but if you're one of those people who hate yourselves, obviously you don't want to wake up in the morning with a fresh hot cup of coffee, and you want to try something that's made with masala chai, cinnamon, turmeric, sea salt, some other things that mushrooms,
You've
something,
got it down so
and
much
that's
you
it.
can just spit it out. It's just
And that's it. And it has 1/7 of the caffeine, but will keep you energized all day long. And if you want to make the switch from coffee today, head over to muddywatersofreedom.com/mud and get your starter pack today.
boy, that was subtle. So somehow we just got to pitch in for your guys' sponsor on my show. It's great. Oh,
And you should go out and vote for Bull Johnson for Congress because he's in the 7th district of Minnesota.
well, it's funny. Bull's going to probably be on this weekend because Bull's got something going on that's very interesting. Someone named Jason Lyon. I recognize. He says, "OMG, it's Matt Wright. Someone pinch me. I must be dreaming."
He's my stalker.
I talked to him. That doesn't surprise me. He's a little fanboy.
Yeah, he's my stalker.
And then he says, "Hopefully he sees this and gives me a raise." It's pretty hard.
I will
pretty
raise
hard to
his
double
salary.
nothing.
Right, I will raise his salary 100%.
That's phenomenal. So he needs to get his own sponsors.
Right, he does. He gets his own sponsors.
Oh, yeah. No, so yeah, I'm thinking about having Bull on since I know you guys every once in a while you guys throw a ad out there for Bull because I know that Bull has
Yeah.
bought some airtime with you guys, but
he tomorrow, the episode that's coming out tomorrow at roughly 8:00 Eastern, was going to be brought to you by Bull Johnson for Congress.
nice. Bull, you could throw some of that ad money my way. No, Bull just ran into the grind, the Minnesota Republican county level. We call them BPOUs here. I don't know what you guys call them in your neck of the woods, but a BPOU here in Minnesota, one of the counties, Otter Tail County, literally has basically kicked Otter Tail County Republicans out of the party for signing the petition for Bull to get on the ticket, which wasn't a guarantee on their part that they were going to vote for Bull. They were just doing the Democratic thing and signing the petition so he wouldn't have to pay a fee or not pay the fee, but go through the nomination process.
The party of free speech is kicking people out for signing their name to allow somebody to speak.
Yeah, I mean, and if anybody who's been paying attention to my channel here when it comes to the Republican Party in Minnesota and pretty much across the country, the last couple of months, most of my content lately has been really focused on exposing just how bad it's been in the Party of Free Speech here in the state of Minnesota. It's bad. But there again, you guys had kind of had some of the same problem with the Libertarian Party over the last few years with the go ahead. You were
Yeah, I mean, I was a member of the Libertarian Party in 2020 because I was forcefully signed up by somebody else, and
anybody we've mentioned already?
Yeah, he was on your first episode. And so I was a member of the party for that year, and it was strictly so that they could try to win some competition for new member signups. And I didn't even know until I got the membership card in the mail. And I was just like, oh, look. And then once it lapsed, they were like, hey, you should renew your membership. And I was, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't pay a lot of attention to the Libertarian Party, just like I don't pay attention a lot to the Republican and the Democratic parties, like what goes on in the inner workings, because I don't care. It doesn't matter to me.
But you're libertarian in philosophy.
Yeah, I'm libertarian in philosophy. I don't care about the party at all.
Do you see yourself when it comes to parties as mostly apolitical because you don't see it going anywhere, or are you just at a point where even if you find a party that looks like it represents you, there's just a lack of trust?
So I don't
know it's
see
a weird question out of the gate.
Well, no, I mean it's fine. It made me think out of the gate, but I do see it going somewhere, and the end goal that I think many of us have. I think the Libertarian Party is the best way to get to that end goal. But the biggest issue that I have with the Libertarian Party is there's so much infighting and so much high school drama that I think they focus so much on that instead of putting forward candidates and putting money into candidates and putting support behind candidates, that candidates aren't getting a chance to win. And that's been my biggest issue with them. When it was 2014, I think, and we were in the middle of a special election here in Florida, and I was working for a Libertarian candidate that was running for the House of Reps, and the chair of the Libertarian Party came down and he did a radio interview in the same county that this guy was running, and he said Libertarians don't run to win elections, they run just to let people know about the Libertarian philosophy. And at that point I was like, why do you think I want to give you money? You just basically torpedoed any chance we have of getting any real amount of. You told them that we're not running to win. You told the people that are voting, oh, don't vote for him, he's not running to win. And after that, it's just been a comedy of errors, and I've enjoyed watching it because I like train wrecks.
I think we all do, actually. I actually got out of any active involvement in organized politics for quite some time. I was when I was a much younger man, much younger, I was the vice chair of my county Republican Party, and I walked away from it only because I felt them pulling away from my values,
right,
and pulling more towards get along to go along, that uniparty mentality. And it was only in 2020 when I was looking around and hoping to see somebody that supposedly was a constitutional conservative, which is one thing that I do share in common with most libertarians, is most of the libertarians that I would interact with and talk to are constitutionally conservative. They're in the sense that they want a strict interpretation of the Constitution, not somebody playing fast and loose with it.
Yes. Yeah, I would say that they're constitutional originalists. I wouldn't say that they're constitutional conservatives.
I'll go with that.
Yeah. And because I think there is a distinction between the two.
Sure.
Because constitutional conservatives typically end up they still twist the Constitution to their viewpoint, where I feel that the libertarians who still who still believe in the Constitution, they are more like, this is what the founders meant. We know this is what the founders meant based on what they've said. This is what we need to go with. It's not any sort of twisting of the words or trying to redefine anything.
No, I'd be fine with that terminology. I use conservative in the sense of not so much as a political movement, but as a statement of this is that originalist mentality. In fact, there was actually somebody just started to lambaste some of the Supreme Court justices that are viewed more as conservative, and was kind of lambasting them for being originalist about the Constitution. I'm like, you know, heaven forbid that
Heaven
the
forbid
Supreme
that
Court
you-
justices be originalists when it comes to the Constitution.
the job that they're supposed to do.
Matt, just out of curiosity, how old are you?
Oh, buddy. I have never answered that question on air.
Ever? Darn.
No,
It's like,
no,
oh,
no.
well,
I'm
not,
older
you
than
know,
you. I'm older than you think.
but younger than I am, so maybe,
Maybe.
maybe.
I'll tell you off air.
And I won't. It's not that big of a deal to me. I was just curious because pretty much everybody has come to. Very few people were kind of born and raised into a libertarian mindset.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
the youngest generation, the kids that are growing up right now are being raised in that, because you have a lot of libertarians that are getting together and
Right.
they're raising their kids in that more free market. You know, we don't need the government. We're going to go grow our own food. We're going to collect rainwater. You know, I'm going to teach you how to shoot a gun. You're seeing a lot more of that now. So kids are being raised libertarian now, but yeah, for a long time you did not see that. You didn't see that at all. But I grew up as I was a conservative Republican. My parents are very much conservative Republicans, and they're still are to this day. You know, love them to death. We just disagree on a multitude of issues. But I was very much a conservative Republican. I grew up thinking, you know, drugs are bad. I grew up thinking drugs are bad. I thought that I didn't have a problem with government giving subsidies to corporations because they would be able to hire more people and things
Good
like
old
that.
crony capitalism.
Right. And like, I didn't have an issue with it. But now I'm like, I still don't have an issue with it, but I want them to give that to everybody. Like, just get rid of the taxes that you would charge.
It's funny that you say that because I was just having a conversation on Facebook with the county the county commission chair of the third largest metro county area in the state of Minnesota. It started yesterday and into today, and kind of pointed out that you're supposed to be the small government conservative on this county commission, and you're over here shilling for putting pressure on the city, the city council and the mayor of the city, as well as the county commission to give for a housing development that's supposed to be for ostensibly for the lower class people, as far as lower class as in finances, and you're giving this corporate developer these breaks, and you want the city to waive the permitting fees and whatnot. And I asked him, I said, so what if I made an argument that I own a homestead in your county, and I needed another acre of land or a quarter acre of land, and I wanted you to just give me that quarter acre of land, and I also wanted you to waive the fees for the husbandry type building that I need to build. Would I get that? What if I made the argument that it would be
No.
good for the community? Would I get that? And you know, he's engaging in the conversation somewhat, which is encouraging. But it comes back to what you were just saying. If you're going to do that for a corporation, then why can't you do it for everybody else? Because like you
For
were
everybody
saying,
else.
most of the time, the Republicans they're not against welfare. They're just against they're against social welfare, not corporate welfare.
Right.
And
Yeah, and that's a good way to put that. Yeah, because they are for welfare. They're just for corporate welfare or corporatism. They're against the social welfare. I'm against both. Well, I mean, I'm not against. Yeah, I'm against both. Instead of giving subsidies or tax breaks or refunds to corporations, just stop taking their taxes, stop taking my taxes, stop taking everybody's taxes. Let us keep 100% of our money, and then let us fend for ourselves, and you know, be able to save as much money as we possibly can, and we can spend it on whatever we want.
well, just imagine what would well, if you go back to the inception of the federal income tax, prior to that, churches, charities, whether they were, church charities or just private charities or whatever organizations, they were taking care of the poor and the downtrodden
Yeah, yeah, and they
much
did a
better.
better job.
We
Yeah, it
had a
was much more
much
efficient.
lower, yeah, we had a much lower level of poverty because those charities were actually proficient in training people how to live and getting them into the workforce again, which is, strange. I was listening to Rothbard's takedown of Friedman on my way home from work. The speech that he gave a very long time ago, and it's an old speech because it's just still pictures of him while he's speaking. So,
Right.
and I was listening to that, and I had never heard him speak. I've read a little bit of what what Rothbard has said, but everything he's saying is stuff that I've been saying for quite some time, which is, yeah, the minute you start putting people on the dole, they're going to come up with ways to stay on the dole.
That's right.
And where
And you
are
saw
we?
that you saw that massively over COVID, over 2020. You saw a ton of people that were forced out of work. The government forced them out of work by telling them they had to stay home. They closed down businesses. People weren't getting paid, so they ended up giving them, putting them on the dole, and they started making more money sitting at home doing nothing as opposed to when they went to work. So when their jobs started reopening, they were like, "Well, I'm not going back," and they just figured out ways to make it work for them. And it was an issue that you saw, like here in Florida. I think that was a couple of years ago. I think if you qualified for the full amount, I think you were getting like $900 a week at the beginning, or maybe it may have been $700 a week. And so you're getting, $2,800 a month. So a lot of people who were making less than, I can't do that math in my head.
The hourly rate, yeah, whatever the hourly rate would be for that. So
Right, exactly. If you're making less than that, then what's the point? Like, why would you want to go back to work? Instead, you just say, "Oh yeah, no, they didn't take me back." The government's not calling them to check. They have millions of people who are giving them the same story. They're like, "Okay, well, let's just keep handing out this free money and we'll just give it to people and everybody stayed on it." And because of that, you see where we are now with 8.6% inflation, and we're in a recession, but they aren't calling it a recession.
what was a deciding factor for you walking away from the Republican side and saying, okay, I'm fully embracing libertarianism? Because you brought up, well, I thought all drugs were evil, because I know that a lot of libertarians are actually not drug users.
Right.
They like at all, like they don't drink alcohol, they don't use any kind of intoxicant, but they say a much of, kind of what you said, which is, why is it illegal? Why does it need to be
Right.
illegal? Is there something inherently evil about a particular drug? So is it something like that, or was there something else, or was it just kind of a shift where you're saying none of this makes sense the way it
Yeah, it
goes?
was a slow burn for me. Because like I was anti-drug until I tried them, and then I was like, "Well,
It's not so bad.
this isn't bad. I don't see what all the fuss is about." Um, these are actually pretty fun. I don't get why these are illegal. Um,
It's the fun suckers in society.
right.
They don't want anybody to have any fun.
So like that wasn't like where my shift happened, but that was the thing that kind of opened my eyes. And I was like, why is it okay for me to drink and to smoke cigarettes and to do other things that we know harms my body and is going to kill me at some point in my life? We can do these things, but we can't do these things. So this makes no sense. And I was still a Republican at the time. And I was like, okay, well, I'm a Republican who smokes weed and does everything else. But so I went
Literally everything. I just do it all.
I did. Yeah, like everything. There's not much. When clicking off the lit, when people are like, "What drugs have you done?" I'm like, it's much quicker for me to tell you which ones I didn't. Um, but yeah, I can name one you didn't. No, you can't.
No, I bet you
I
can't.
can. I bet you can. But yeah, so when so after that, it kind of became more of it kept moving forward, and it was like a why do I have to wear my seatbelt? Like that's my choice. And then it, I started seeing that in more places. Like, why do I have to do this? This makes no sense. This law makes absolutely no sense. And then I started just growing a distrust for any law that they were passing. I was like, why is the reason they're passing this? Why? What are they trying to control? How are they trying to raise money? And with the police, instead of going out and solving crime, they were sitting there arresting me for possession of marijuana, which was technically a crime, but I didn't think it should be. And they
Which
weren't
is what every
murder.
criminal says. So I mean,
Well, I mean, somebody who commits a murder, I don't think they're going out going, "This shouldn't be a crime." They know it's a crime.
believe it or not, you would be surprised the number of people I've run into. Are like,
That's
well, I was,
fair.
I was in my former career. I met a lot of people who were like, well, yeah, but bro, you don't understand. So my case was different.
That's
So,
that's fair.
but that's subjective based on my
Right.
objective experiences. So
Right. So yeah, it was kind of like that, and I was just like, what I'm doing are victimless crimes, and you're sitting here doing a speed trap to try to raise money for the state because our taxes aren't enough for you guys. So you're just gonna sit here and catch me going 5 miles over the speed limit, and then end up making me feel terrified at the age of 19 that I'm gonna go to prison or whatever if I don't let you look in my car. Like
which
it
could
started
also
making
end up
no
in me going to prison.
right. Which yeah,
Damn,
that had a higher chance of it.
damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Right,
It's
exactly, and it just became I didn't trust I didn't trust the powers that be, and I was like, why are these people in power? And then when John McCain was running against Obama, again, my parents were massive conservatives, and they told me my entire life that John McCain was a Democrat, and he's just awful. He's like John McCain. He's basically a Democrat. He sides with them more than he sides with the Republicans, and he just runs as a Republican to get elected. And he's just not a good. He's just not a good. He's just not a good Republican, so I would never vote for him for anything. And then it was John McCain versus Obama, and they were like, "We're voting for McCain. McCain's going to be the next great thing that happened to this party." And I went, "Okay, so it's all bullshit." I'm assuming I can curse on this show.
actually I don't mind if you curse, but Jason's gonna be mad at me if I don't point this out. The two words that we don't say on my channel
Okay.
are the virus by name. We call it the coof.
Okay.
So
Okay.
because of the algorithm and censoring,
Fair.
and we always refer to the jab.
Okay.
Because if we mention the virus by name more than 2, 3, maybe 4 times, they immediately make me appeal their decision to demonetize
I get it.
the video.
No,
So
I understand. I go through that often.
I can't imagine.
I go through it a lot. Yeah,
I have a
so
funny feeling this person says, I like this guess, he gets it. I
don't know. I don't know who that is. So thank you, Nano Joe. I like you. You get it. You get it.
So in this drift, and that's the thing. I get where you're coming from, because like in 2016, everybody's like, "Who are you voting for? Who are you voting for?" And I'm like, "Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm not voting for Trump. He doesn't represent me." And coming from where I come from with especially on some spiritual issues, I'm like, I'm not real comfortable with how he has talked to people and some of the things that he kind of brags about, and even some of the stuff he said about his Christianity, I'm like, so because some if you remember one of the things, and I don't know how much you were paying attention to this, but one of the things that he said was somebody goes, "Oh, so you're a Christian? Have you ever asked God for forgiveness?" And he goes, "Well, I don't feel like I need to ask forgiveness for anything." And I'm like, and I'm watching all of my Christian friends go, "He's the one," and I'm like, "Well, what makes you say that?" "Well, he's a Christian," and I'm like, "Did you hear what he said
Yes,
in that statement?"
Donald Trump, the serial cheater who ran slumlords in New York City, was a good Christian man.
Oh, and then the other one was, "Oh, well, he's an outsider," and I'm like, "Have you seen the pictures of the people he hangs out with?"
Yeah, the man who has multiple pictures with Bill and Hillary,
and Epstein.
hanging out with him well, yeah. I mean, everybody had pictures with Epstein. It was the thing to do. But yeah,
Well, I don't know if Epstein was the thing to do, but he had some things going on that were the thing to do. So
getting your picture with Epstein was the thing to do. The things to do Epstein had on his island. But yeah, he wasn't an outsider, and he definitely wasn't a Christian. He just picked up that moniker for the election because he knew that Republicans would eat it up.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, it was funny too because then when he won, I had some people who I'm close to ask me, "So how do you feel about him now?" And I come from a pretty traditional Reformed, I'm like Calvinistic background in my religion, and these books you see up here, this is the entire set of John Calvin, the theologian, his commentaries, and somewhere I have his Institutes of Christian Religion around here. It's gathering dust. But somebody asked me, "Well, how do you feel about it?" And my one comment to them back in a text message was, "Well, John Calvin said when God wants to judge a nation, he grants them wicked rulers." That did not end well. That was not.
I can't think of a ruler that we've had in my lifetime that wasn't at least some portion evil. We have not had a virtuous leader in my lifetime. By any stretch of the imagination. The Democrats will preach all day about how Obama didn't have any scandals while he was in office. Yeah, unless you count, Fast and Furious, dropping millions of drones. Bombs, drone bombing citizens, anything like that. Yeah, no, nothing. Absolutely nothing.
No scandals. None.
And Republicans will always go back to Reagan and say he was great, he was virtuous. It's like, well, yeah, I think the Iran-Contra affair, and he did more to hurt gun ownership than any Democrat ever. But other than that, yeah, sure, why held back the rights of gay people for decades. But other than all of that stuff, yeah, just nothing wrong with that guy. So,
Bull, you're not allowed in this. Well, Bull, if you want back in the stream, you were on a call. Bull was on a call. I guess when you're campaigning, you have to take a call and you can't watch.
You're busy. You're busy.
You're busy, yeah, because we don't have anything to do on a Wednesday night. I mean, I didn't just forego watching my new season of MasterChef to do this, but that's okay, Bull. We're here for you. Bull, you have to super chat if you want to say anything else. Nano Joe, you can keep talking. I think we lost Jason though. So anyway,
I think he's at work.
He's probably been at work. He's nonstop. He's probably campaigning and
he's constantly working.
He
is one of the hardest working people I know.
So I'm with you on the ideology of that drift that maybe I don't even know if if I was behind you as chronologically, I think I've been holding out to some degree, thinking that maybe we can recapture um, for me the Republican Party and make it the party of traditional liberty and traditional values, and in that regard, without treading all over everybody else. But what I'm seeing right now is probably what you're observing as even more of an outsider now is it's really. Did you read Animal Farm
Yeah.
ever?
Yeah.
You remember the last scene of Animal Farm? I mean, I talk about this a lot. My hardcore watchers are going to be tired of hearing this analogy, but I think it's a really good one. The closing scene of Animal Farm is the pigs, have taught themselves how to walk and how to speak English,
Right.
and they
Some are
have
more equal than others.
some are more equal than others.
Right.
But the pigs are in the farmhouse, which of course was forbidden for any farm animal. And they're all sitting around a table drinking alcohol and playing cards. And all the other farm animals are all huddled around one window looking in and watching. And there's this in that closing scene, the memorable moment is as they're watching, you can't tell the difference between the pigs and the people. And for me, when I look at the Republican Party as a whole now and the Democrats, you can't hardly tell a difference between them. There are some outspoken, Massey, and there's Cruz gets there sometimes, not all the time, but there are some outspoken people, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't know, Bo Barrett from Colorado. I mean, but they're outliers, and they're not.
They are definite outliers.
Yeah, they're outliers, but Massey's maybe, by my estimation, Massey's probably the closest to really being an outsider who really wants to do something with the party. But by and large, the party is really interested in staying in power and playing the middle ground. And I told Eric the other day, and I might have mentioned this to you too. I'm kind of at that point where I'm about ready to go. I'm done. I'm done. I've about had it, because so I understand what you're talking about, because I see so many inconsistencies. I just see a ton of inconsistencies.
And I get that. And it's when you're looking at like we'll just take the inflation. Everybody right now is calling it Bidenflation, because Biden's economic policies are definitely fueling that steam engine. But it's not just because of Biden. It's also because of policies that were voted on and passed by Trump and by Republican Congresses and or Republican Senate. It was a Democratic Congress at the time, but they started this massive spending of $7 trillion in 2 years. That was started with a Republican Senate.
They're sending billions. They're agreeing to send billions of dollars to the Ukraine right now.
Yeah, they
you think that's not going to kill this country financially?
It's like $1 billion a day. It's like $1 billion a day. But when you do $7 trillion in 2 years, that's more than $1 billion a day. I'm pretty sure. I can't do math in my head because I'm not that bright, but I think that's more than $1 billion a day. And what you did was you gave anybody watching this show, listening, I think, what was the total? $2,700 out of the $7 trillion that you printed out of thin air, and then you gave the rest to your friends. You gave it to Wall Street. You gave it to the banks. You gave it to anybody that's going to donate to your campaign. You gave it to, they did like the paycheck protection loans, and then they just wrote those off. And it's like, okay, well, these were supposed to be loans. And then you're like, oh, nope, screw it. We're not even going to ask for that money back. You can just
but you damn sure know they're going to make us pay it back in our taxes.
But yeah, exactly. But that money just got passed on to everybody else who didn't apply for those loans. And that's what caused everything to go up.
I need you to address Jason's discontent here, or actually his malfeasance. So Jason says no super chat function on Facebook. Well, then, Jason, I guess you need to get over on YouTube and watch and correct that, because you just asked for a raise, so I know that you're going to be making more money. So, Matt, address your
100%. You're going to make 100% more than what you made.
So you heard that. You now, from your boss, you just heard you have no justification to not super chat from YouTube. And he also says that he's winning, and you made him tear up. See that? Hardest working people I know made him tear up.
Yep. Jason is honestly, he is one of the hardest working people I know.
I've noticed that.
Dude is just a workhorse. He is constantly doing something. I don't think he ever, like, if he is not busy at work or working on some project for, the Libertarian Party of South Carolina or some campaign, or something for Muddied Waters Media, he is working on something at the house, or he is just going out there and being one of the best dads that I know. And he is an inspiration to, well, me, but I'm certain he's an inspiration to many other people out there. Like I would define him as one of my heroes. And now he's probably crying.
No, he's probably having to sip the bourbon. He probably had to break open the bottle of bourbon that a client gave his wife just to get through that. I had him on the other night, and I'm looking. He says he loves you, bro. There, I'll let him tell you yourself. Anyway, this is supposed to be about you, and we're over here praising Mr. Merca. You were mentioning all of these moral failings of presidents in your lifetime, and you had mentioned Obama and some of the things, but for me, I see all of the stuff that you mentioned, but there's also another one that really I don't think people pay much attention to, but I know you and Spike have talked about it, and others have as well. But to me, one of the greatest moral failings was the Obama-Biden administration's actual interference in a sovereign nation like Ukraine, and actively orchestrating the overthrow of a duly elected, democratically duly elected government in the Ukraine, installing a puppet regime,
with Zelensky,
forcing the American people now to get behind yet again a second puppet in line over there in Zelensky, to now get behind him and feel obligated, because of the malfeasance of the Obama-Biden administration, to back a country that is ultimately literally just as evil and corrupt as the Russian government is in doing what it's doing.
So yeah, but you can take that even further back. The reason that we went into war with Iraq is because they wanted to go after Saddam Hussein, who, because George Bush Sr. started the war with Saddam Hussein, never finished it, and then Saddam Hussein said that he was going to assassinate George Bush Sr., and so that was sort of we're making up for that. They said it was about 9/11, but we all know that it wasn't about 9/11. It was about other reasons. People are like, no war for oil. I don't think it was about that. I think it was, we're trying to finish what we started, and we want to put somebody in power that is going to be our, that's going to be our puppet. But when Saddam Hussein was put into power back in the early 80s, mid 80s, I don't remember the year, America was like, Saddam Hussein's going to be one of the greatest friends to America. He's going to be great having him over there. And then 8 years later, he had become exactly what we didn't want over there. And he was like, hey, do you care if I invade our Kuwait? And they said, they didn't say anything back. So he went into Kuwait, and then they were like, no, you can't do that. We're going to come over there and we're going to bomb the shit out of you and whatever. And then, so we have done this forever. And every president, with the exception, I will say that with the exception of Trump, he is the only president that has not, to the best of my knowledge, helped overthrow a government to put a puppet in place.
I lost you for a minute. There you are.
Oh, okay.
That's really weird. Yeah, you were getting a little garbled, and then all of a sudden everything froze.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, but now you sound good.
Hmm. Okay. But yeah, you had
So we had all that going on with Iraq, and if you listen, and I appreciate where you're going with this, because that's one of the feed-in lines to Dave Smith and Robbie's show. Part of the problem is, if you want to know who our enemy's going to be in the future, take a look at who we're
see who we're putting right.
funding today.
Like we trained Osama bin Laden. He came over here. He got trained by the CIA, I believe, CIA, FPS. He got trained by
against the Russians.
Right. And we were like, hey, we're going to train guys to fight against the Russians. And he was like, great. And he did. He learned how to fight from us. He took money from us. And then he went over there and became Osama bin Laden. And so that is what you see. Like, especially if you look in South America, anytime that we go in to overthrow a government and put a different government in place, we are putting in somebody who within 2 years is going to be just as bad as the person that we just went in there to overthrow. So it doesn't make any sense for us. You can't point out, I mean, you can point out the Obama-Biden Ukrainian thing. You can also say, look what happened in Syria. Look what happened in Syria when they were trying to overthrow, oh God, I just blanked on that guy's name.
I know who you're talking about too. Now I'm like, thanks a lot. Now my old man is showing.
Right, just completely blanked on that name. But tried to go in and overthrow that, and then they were like, oh well, he's using chemical weapons, and it's like, is he, or is that we're Taliban, or I don't remember at what stage they were at the time, or was that them? And it's like, okay, well, sure. But no matter how far back you go, no matter which presidency you go to, you're going to see that happened somewhere in the world, that we inserted ourselves, we installed somebody, and a few years later, we didn't like that person. Egypt is a huge example of that. We helped them install their leader. I don't know if they have a president or not. And then the people revolted against it. And we went over
You're thinking of Mubarak?
Yep. And then we went over, like, the people revolted against it, and then they put somebody else in, and the people revolted against that like 4 days later. And so it is a constant mess, especially when we're trying to insert ourselves into foreign affairs, and we need to just stop doing that. And no president has really ever learned that, except I will give Trump the credit that he did not do that. He didn't end wars, but he didn't start any new ones. And to the best of my knowledge, he did not overthrow any governments.
Yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head either. But there again, I think a lot of his 4 years was damage control anyway. Had they not gone after him the way they did, I'm actually skeptical about what kind of trouble he would have gotten himself into if he wasn't so busy doing damage control the entire time. That's just, just look at him. I'm notorious myself. If I'm not busy trying to keep myself out of trouble, I find a way to get myself into trouble.
That's actually pretty fair. If he wasn't constantly having to battle with everybody from both sides,
yeah.
How bad would it have been? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think he would have started any new war. I don't know if he would have overthrown anything. He would have definitely inserted himself into governments, I believe. But I don't believe he would have gone in and overthrown. But anything that he was going to do was going to be like when, he talks about being a Second Amendment absolutist. And then he went, I'm all for taking the guns first and due process.
He literally said, we don't need to worry about due process. I'm like,
right,
bro, you're the president. It's like your job to worry. That's the one thing.
Due process is important.
It's like literally the one thing you should be worried about is due process. Do you see the ability or the possibility of people from the Republican Party who are disenfranchised, who are frustrated. I'll bring up Bull's situation again. So, you have this county party literally basically kicking people out, saying you're not welcome here. If you even sign this petition for Bull Johnson, not saying you were going to vote for him for sure, but just signing the petition. So these disenfranchised Republicans across the United States right now looking around and saying, we might be able to find allies in the libertarian movement, and maybe actually have an affect change, not just to inform people of who the libertarians are and not win elections, but who inform people who,
Right.
not just that, but actually maybe start to support people and get them elected who are going to actually more closely represent where I'm at on some things. Do you think that's possible?
Yes, it's possible. What I find, and this could just be, from my own point of view, what I find is most times when people who are Republicans come over, and even I fell victim to this. Even I fell victim to this a couple of different times when voting for things that weren't president. But when I would sit there and be like, I would look at the people running, and there would be, you had your Republican, you had your Democrat, and I didn't really like either of them. And then there'd be your third party person. There were times that a while ago, it's been a while since I've done this, but there were times when I would sit there and go, I can't let that guy win, and I'm afraid that this vote might be the deciding vote. And so I voted for the Republican in order to make sure that that Democrat didn't win. And you're going to get that a lot. You're going to get the cold feet voters who are going to go out there and they're going to talk a big game. They're going to talk a big game about voting for a third party. You saw it a lot in 2016 with Trump and Hillary. Gary Johnson and Bill Weld were polling exponentially high for a third party candidate. And people were like, oh, this could really shake some things up. And people had figured out ways that Gary Johnson could have ended up winning the election if he'd won his home state of New Mexico and then maybe one other. And then it was like, oh, it would all be up in the air, and it would just become like, it would come down to the Senate and they would just have to vote, and they could vote for him. And I'm like, they wouldn't though. But he ended up,
the Republicans and the Democrats would have teamed up to make sure that didn't happen.
Right. Yeah, it would have been Hillary. If there's not even a question, it would have been Hillary done. But so he was polling, I think, at one point like 12%. Not high enough to get him on the debate stage, but high enough that it would have shaken up the election a lot. And he didn't hit 5. He got 4.3, I think, 4.3, 4.4 of the national vote. And that's because everybody that was like, yeah, I'm going to vote for him, went in there, looked at Hillary and Trump and went, man, I can't vote for Gary Johnson because that might mean that Hillary might win. Or I can't vote for Trump because that might mean, or I can't vote for Gary because that might mean that Trump will win. And so they ended up cold feet voting and voting for the candidate that they were always going to vote for anyway, no matter how big of a game they talked.
Do you think that's going to be a constant problem for not libertarians, but for the Libertarian Party as a whole?
So that is going to be a constant problem at that level. That's going to be a constant problem for people at that level for years to come. The issue that we need to get over as libertarians is we need to start winning a lot more in local races, which you're seeing a lot. And here in Florida, where libertarians are winning a lot. In Pennsylvania, they're winning a lot.
New Hampshire,
they're winning a lot. You're seeing people winning at the local level that are libertarians. Once you start winning in your city councils, your mayorships, your county,
it almost sounded like you said the shitty council, and I'm just gonna say, apropos. So
you say potato, I say fuck you. Same thing.
And I'm gonna have to go put a warning on my video now.
But so once they start winning those, and then people will see that, yes, okay, this philosophy works when we're dealing with it on a local level. Okay, let's give them a chance at the state level. Let's give them a chance in our state houses and our state senates or whatever you have in your particular state. And then once they start doing well there, and people are like, you know what, I really like what Bull Johnson is doing here at the state level. And then they'll move up to the next level and they'll be like, hey, you know what? Let's put him into the House of Reps, or, let's put him in, if he's a Senate-wide candidate, a statewide candidate, and people in all of Minnesota know who he is. They're like, hey, you know what? I like that guy. I like what he's been doing here in the state. Let's put him in the Senate and see what happens. And that's how it's got to go. It's not, I don't see that people running for president will win as a libertarian for many years to come. But I do see libertarians winning at the local level, which will eventually turn into the state level, which will eventually turn into the federal level, which will eventually turn into the president.
I'm actually glad to hear you say that, because that's something that I've been telling people for a long time. What we need to do is we need to put constitutional originalist. See, I do learn on the ballot for school boards and city council and county commission, because that's where that's where you cut your teeth. Just to start with, you cut your teeth there, but two, you develop your chops while you're there as well. And if you're really stringent in staying on message, that translates into more local control, which is what we should really want. And when I say want, I want more local control over decision making than I want state level or federal state level control. Ultimately, what we should be gaining in a movement like that is getting a bunch of constitutional originalists under the city council or the county commission or the school board, who are all going to say, now what we're going to do is we're going to completely dismantle the entire process here at the local level.
Yep.
And
as you see, when you start seeing people dismantling the fat at the local level, when they're getting rid, that will bleed over, and they'll say, you know what, they saved, they saved that city $100,000 last year, and that's amazing for a small city.
Well, let's look at it. Let's just look at it. I had brought this up. I can't remember if it was with Jason or Eric the other day, but I just literally brought this up, talking about the idea of the fact that I live in a tiny, like you're gonna laugh. The town I live in is 2,600 people. It's literally the largest city in the county that I live in. And we have so many regulations on the books here. Like, if I want to have backyard chickens, which right now you should all be trying to get backyard chickens based on how things are going. But if I want to go get backyard chickens, I have to go and get permission from my closest neighbors. And then if I can get my neighbors to sign off on it, I still have to get permission from my city council or from the city administrator. But to have chickens. Could you just, without even talking about whether or not we're going to raise people's evaluations for, street improvements and sewer improvements and whatnot, could you imagine how much it would change if we just had a couple of people in a small town walked in and said, we're doing away with the ordinances that say you have to have permission from your neighbors and from the city to raise chickens. That the domino effect on that, it wouldn't be chaos, it would be freedom. And there's a massive difference between chaotic anarchy and liberty-minded anarchy. Just a massive difference.
And most people sit there and they look at anarchy and they're like, and they think of what the media has portrayed it. Like, it would just be this lawless town in the Old West, except much more violent somehow. And people would just go out and do whatever they want. They just rob and pillage and plunder and do anything that they want, and there'd be no rules. But that's
As
not
opposed to the robbing and pillaging and plundering that's happening in the
Right,
Twin
that-
Cities of Minnesota right now with a lot of laws in place. So
exactly. Yeah, if people are going to do that, they're going to do that. That's just the way it is. Nobody is going out robbing or murdering or raping and thinking, if if this wasn't a if there wasn't a law against these things, I would do this every day. Yeah, and nobody's thinking that. Nobody is out there thinking, oh man, I'm not going to try heroin today because it's illegal. People who, if you want to try heroin, you're going to try heroin. That's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. If you want to rob a store, you're going to go rob the store. You do not care if it's illegal. So it really wouldn't change.
the heck you say?
Nothing. Nothing about that would change.
What do you, if you were going to pick an issue right now that you think a libertarian, not necessarily in the party, but just somebody who's libertarian minded, who's an originalist, that's going to run for local office, if you were going to give some advice on them about what issue to run on and really just, in a positive way, beat into the minds of the people around them in their community, that would appeal to people who maybe lean towards that Republican side or might be that disenfranchised Democrat, what would it be?
So, because every community is different, it's a little hard, but I would say the easy answer that I could give and the broadest answer I could give is property rights. And you can take that to mean, the property that you own here in your house with, your stuff, or you can take that to mean the property of the land that you live on. But I would go with property rights and talk about lowering the taxes, the real estate taxes to live there. I would talk about that. I would talk about stop putting regulations on how long somebody's grass can grow or whether or not they can own chickens in their backyard, or, their bushes have to be no more than 6 feet tall, whatever the stupid regulation or ordinance is. I would say get rid of that. Let people grow their backyards how they want to grow their backyards. Let them have chickens if they want to have chickens. Let them, cut their lawns after dark, as long, let them do those things.
It's funny that you say it that way, because I talk about this a lot. I was listening to your show with the gentleman from Alaska who was running for House Representatives, and you were talking about being up there, about how cold it is up there and whatnot. And here's a funny thing about Minnesota. I can't mow my yard after a certain time at night. Right? I can't. I'll get some sort of noise complaint. I'll get, and someone with a badge will show up, and I'll either get a stern scolding or I'll get a ticket or, some sort of violation. Right. But when it snows, if I want to go out at 2:00 in the morning and run my snowblower, which for the most part is almost always louder and more raucous than my mower is, I could do that. And that is the absolute inconsistency that we're dealing with when you let the state run things and make decisions. There's no, like, and because who wants to go mow their yard at 11 o'clock at night, even if it's cooler? Ultimately, nobody wants to. Like, for one, okay, yeah, well, but you're nuts.
I live in Florida. That temperature difference is usually about 10 to 20 degrees.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna make you feel better. We had 102 on Monday and 97 or 96 yesterday, and it dropped down to 10 degrees or down 10 degrees today. So it only got up to 87 today. So I kind of get your weather too.
I mean, yeah, if you don't count humidity. Um,
Just so you know, our humidity levels are high because we have a lot of water in Minnesota.
you do have a lot of water in Minnesota, but I will put up Florida's humidity levels to yours any day of the week.
Well, now that we've completely derailed, so you're saying these things that are these close neighborhood type issues, like the stuff that really matters, like you were saying, these permits and whether or not I can grow. I had actually brought the grass issue up as well. Like literally, if your grass is taller than like I think it's 5 inches, our city will send somebody out to mow your yard, then assess you an $80 fine that if you don't pay it, like literally they could take it from you, and if you refuse to have it taken, you could get arrested for not paying a fine for not mowing your yard.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? This,
There was a guy that not too far from here. He's only about 20 minutes from where I live now. He was a vet. He was an older vet. He owned his house outright. But he couldn't get up to walk around, and he didn't have disposable income, so he couldn't mow his lawn. So they kept fining him, and then they kept putting interest on the fines because he couldn't pay the fines. And they ended up taking his house.
are you? I'm my own showrunner, so I'm answering questions.
No, I get it.
And
I get it. I understand.
so I heard everything you just said. I'm supposed to believe that this house that he owned outright, that he paid for, that as a veteran, somehow he racked up enough fines to justify them seizing his property?
Well, for them to say that they justified it, yeah.
I don't know why you would ever think, man, I just want you to, like, I'm going to chastise you. How could you possibly think that there's too much power in the hands of people? And I mean, have you thought about, I mean, that's a pretty illogical position.
You know, I get told that often, and that's actually one of my favorite stories to tell. And they're like, well, he should have mowed his lawn. Like, he could have saved himself. It's like, okay, well, I'm never going to get through to you.
So you have those feelings too? Like you just, at some point you just go, it's not worth it. Not worth the headache.
Yeah. No, so many times I'm just like, what's the point of me even attempting this? You are so steadfast in your ways, and either you are going to have the come to liberty moment or you're not. You're going to say, well, I believe in liberty, but, and if you still are saying the but, then you're not having your come to liberty moment, and you're not going to be able to make that jump where you realize that so many of these organizations, they have way too much power and they wield them uncontrollably, and there's nothing we can do about it. And they're like, oh, if you don't like it, you can vote us out in however many years. And people forget. People absolutely forget.
Do you think that 2020, 2021, and now 2022 have been eye-opening to a lot of people, or do you think that we're going to fall back into complacency if they back the pressure off just enough, that we'll fall back into complacency? Or do you think enough people have been awakened?
No, I think that people could be, because so many people, they suckled on the teat of government. They took the free money. They live, they were staying at home and they were getting paid to be there by the government. And they're like, yeah, this sucks, but at least I'm getting paid better than I was at my job. And then all of the restrictions and everything else that was thrown down upon them, they just continued to accept it. And they just kept bringing it in. They're like, yeah, it sucks, but what are you going to do? Maybe this will all go away soon, which it never will all go away as long as people are out there going, maybe it'll go away. It's when people stand up. But not enough people have been standing up to do it. You have your you have so many people that are so ingrained into the system, and they believe that there is no other way out, that you need the government, that you need the alphabet agencies, that you need the police, in order to be there. That
Let's touch on that alphabet agency thing that you just brought up, because you guys have mentioned this. I mean, you haven't spent a massive amount of time, but you've talked a little bit about some of the stuff that the alphabet agencies have done. Think of that date in January of 2021, or think of the. I'm vague as hell, but I know you know what I'm talking about. Or even think about in particular about the alphabet agency involvement in the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot.
That's a good example. There was also the Trump rally that was supposed to be happening in D.C., and everybody was like, "This isn't real." Even Trump was like, "Yeah, this is a setup. Don't go to that thing." And everybody that showed up was dressed all preppy, but you could see they were all like concealed carrying in D.C., which is not legal.
Right. Well, it's who cares though, right? You're gonna arrest us all.
Well, they were just going to pull out badges and be like, "Hey, no, we're here to arrest anybody that shows up." Yeah, and you see that, like, there's so much of that. And if you take a look at the ATF recently with the gun, what's the bipartisan Safer Community Act or whatever it's called, the gun legislation that just passed in the Senate, with the 14 Republicans that voted for it. There's a part in there that says we cannot, if you are caught selling weapons to, I don't have it in front of me, so I'm trying to paraphrase it as much as I can, but if you're caught selling weapons to a drug cartel, you're going to go to prison, blah, 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 blah. Well, the ATF has been doing that since the ATF has been around.
What? You keep talking about these crazy things.
The Fast and the Furious,
unsubstantiated conspiracy theories that we can't prove, like Fast and Furious. Have you ever wondered how the BATF ends up in charge of all of the fun stuff?
Yeah, they got alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives, and I'm like, man, that sounds like just a good party. Except I don't drink anymore.
Like who made that decision? I'm over here going, see, leave it to the federal state to screw up life. Like, hey, all of these things are fun, so we're going to create one bureau to screw that up. That's what we're going to.
Well, if the ATF and the DEA ever joined forces, everything would just be a party.
It would be, yeah. Like, I'm pretty sure most of them party anyway. But when you look at the history of the alphabet agencies, whether it be at the federal state level or the state level, I don't say government anymore because I'm trying to get people to remember who the government really is. So, and then I actually will get people to message me and go, every time you do a video, you talk about the federal state and the state and the local state. And I'm like, yeah, well, you need to read Anatomy of the State.
Right.
But when you look at all of those things, do you think that the one thing that might just start to really cause the scales to fall off the eyes of people will be an abuse? I mean, we've already seen abuses of the red flag laws in the past, but with, and I know that you and Spike had talked about this on your the congressional war on the Second Amendment, where you guys talked about, I think it was last week, you guys had mentioned this a little bit, and one of your two episodes available for the freeloaders.
You're right.
But do you think that the way it's being handled, where they're putting pressure on the states to do more because they know they can't, because the federal courts have already ruled that the feds doing it is unconstitutional, do you think people are going to start to see their neighbors getting just jacked up and start to say, this is too much, we're done? Do you think that'll be the thing?
No.
Well, I know they're
Um,
gonna. I know
no,
I
no,
have neighbors that will
no.
probably turn me in at some point.
Right.
But I do you think that
Yeah.
there'll be some
So
guy that's maybe a little bit like us, but hasn't really been pushed, but all of a sudden he's sitting there and he watches the cops pull up and arrest his neighbor, and his neighbor's like literally that old Vietnam vet who's never heard of flying, after he came home from the war, but somebody got mad at him and turned him in for saying something that they thought he shouldn't. Do you think that'll wake people up, or do you think that'll scare people into compliance?
Uh, yeah, so that's gonna do both. It's gonna wake some people up, but it's gonna scare others into compliance. I think that we are going to see, like, I think so much, because when we talked about that, nothing, that bill hadn't been written yet. It was an agreement, and we knew very little, and we just took stabs in the dark at what a lot of the stuff meant. And reading it, we were right. Like, we said that they were going to be closing the boyfriend law, the boyfriend loophole, as they call it. And that is going to end, but they refute, they at no point define what that meant. So let's say you go out and you have a one night stand or a 2 night stand with somebody, and then they're like, oh, well, they threatened me. And now it's like, okay, well, were you in a relationship? Well, we hooked up a couple of times. Well, does that count? I don't know. And it's up to the states to decide whether or not that counts. With red flag laws, they've made it where you can have somebody call a red flag on you, and yeah, you can challenge that position in court, and win or lose, doesn't matter. You are paying for your legal counsel. The
Because it's
government will not,
civil.
because it's civil. You have to pay for the legal counsel, even though they're using a governmental bureau to come in, take your guns, and you are going to be trying to convince a judge that you are in your right mind enough to own firearms. They didn't make any rules or regulations on these, or they made a lot of rules and regulations. They didn't give any definitions about these things. So now you're looking at a situation where a lot of people are you're going to see so many false red flag laws coming across starting July 1st, that they're going to come in and they're going to be like, okay, we're taking guns. We don't have a choice. And
Are
you're
you
going
are
to
you
see,
are you familiar with what the Soviets did? I mean, I know you're familiar, but I'm going to be doing a little. I don't know if it's going to be a short recorded video series for my viewers, but um, Jason just threw me off. I have to share this. You know what, Jason? This is your last comment on Facebook. From now on, if you want to comment, you have to come over to YouTube and super chat it. Moneymaker. Can you read that?
yeah,
I,
it's
I just
true. Uh,
yes.
it's true. I am
He's
one
just
of
he, are you guys in negotiations for keeping him on the platform, because he has been sucking up to you hard today? It's just kind of it's a little it doesn't strike me as very libertarian, Jason. I just want to be honest with
so
you. So
Jason Spike and I have like a very, very close bromance going on, a bro trimance going on, and we just compliment each other at every turn,
I want in on this.
because
uh, so I know that you're familiar with history. I listened to you guys enough to know this, but there was actually a psychological term that was developed in the Soviet Union that was used to um, I got that. Okay. Um, that was used to coin, or not coin, but to create an excuse for the Soviets to lock up dissidents. And they used psychology. Sound familiar?
yeah,
And that phrase is called sluggish schizophrenia. It's non-existent, but they coined this to create a way to remove dissidents. And I've been saying this for quite some time about red flag laws, and I've heard you and Spike talk about it, that it's definitely a concern that we have to have. And don't think for a minute that if you're a Republican, you're in danger from the Democrats, because as we've seen over and over and over again, the Republicans will also then justify doing the same thing that the Democrats do, only to defend their positions.
So if you think about it, in Texas they have that abortion law where it's not the state regulating abortion, which is how they got around the Roe v. Wade thing. But it's people suing third parties, not the woman who's having the abortion, but like the doctor or the person that drove her there or whatever. They didn't outlaw abortion. They just made it where it wouldn't be financially feasible for anybody to do it. When that happened, a lot of people on the right were like, this is great. You figured out a way around abortion, around Roe v. Wade, and you've essentially gotten rid of abortion in the state of Texas. That's amazing. They didn't think that through because California's putting something through on guns that has the exact same thing. If you think somebody has a gun they aren't supposed to have, or you think somebody sold a gun or brought a gun or, drove somebody to go pick up a gun, you can have those people sued. And you have it where even though those guns are federally legal, you now have it where the state where people are going to be sued and essentially outlawing it. You have that issue. So yeah, Republicans may think, okay, yeah, they're not coming after me, or Democrats might think they're not coming after me, but eventually you're going to get to a place where they are doing this so much that even if let's say you're in I'm trying to think of, let's say you're in, I'm going to guess South Dakota, and you want to go buy weed, and you go over and you are somebody who you don't smoke weed, but your friend needs a ride, and you're like, I don't care if you smoke weed, and you go over and you drive and he picks up weed and you drive him back and somebody sues you for that, then you're going to be like, oh, well, wait, I just got screwed here. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of where we're at with that. And that's how it is that, instead of using the state, they're using us against each other. They have turned neighbor against neighbor in order to push laws that they want.
Buck on his episode of Counterflow this week, he had Jason Rink on. I know you're familiar with who Jason Rink is. Yeah. Well, I believe I who he is. He'd be hard to miss right now. Right. Not that you can find him on social media at all anymore. He got banned from Freedom Fest and the Anthem Film Festival. For the love of all that's holy, how does that happen? But anyway, he had Jason Rink on, and they were talking about that a little bit today. That Buck saw this in Texas, and I saw it here in Minnesota. People are more than happy, and I was warning about this over 2 years ago. People are more than happy to be agents of the state for free if you're doing something that they don't like and they know they can find a way to get the law involved in your life.
Yep. And
heaven forbid that the power of the state at whatever level it is, whether it be the municipal state or the state or the federal state, decides to work with one of the other levels of the state against a private citizen. In that same regard, it's hell.
Yeah, and I mean that's where we're at. It's like you just have it where neighbors are going to be going against neighbors. You see it with, like, they call them the Karens. Like, the Karens are the ones that will call you out for your for your ordinance violations and be like, oh, your grass was a quarter of an inch higher than it was supposed to be, so I called the police on you. And you have that going on where neighbor is against neighbor, then they feel that they are the ones that need to back up whatever the state says. And that is an issue. Neighbors should have neighbors' backs. If somebody can't mow their lawn because they're sick or because they're elderly, mow their lawn for them. Don't report it. Just mow, say, hey, do you care if I mow your lawn? And if they're like, no, go ahead. I can't do it because I'm elderly and, my legs don't work right. I'm tired. Mow their lawn.
I've kept you on quite a while. I normally keep people longer, but I want to make sure that you have some time for yourself this evening since you sat and played a game for 45 minutes, because
I did.
once again, I'm my own showrunner. So if anybody would like to, you know what? Here's my offer right now to anybody who's watching. If you would like to come on and be a showrunner for me, help me coordinate my scheduling and my coordinate my time and whatnot, I will offer you the exact same salary that Jason
But
Lyon gets from Muddied Waters Media.
it's a
So
good deal, people.
as of right now, at this very moment, not in 2 days or 2 months or 2 years from now, but at this very moment, whatever Jason Lyon is making as a guaranteed salary, I will offer that to somebody who wants to come and be my showrunner, so that guys like Matt don't have to sit and wait for me to finally show up. Which is, by the way, the first time that's ever happened. I've never had that happen before. You are a published author. You've written a couple of fiction books. Tell us where we can find those and what the names of those books are, so we can support you, and then give us a closing thought, and then get out of here, and I'll do my close after you leave.
So I've got 2 books out right now. One is called Dear Jack, Diary of an Addict. It is the story of 4 friends that come together to help one of them get off of heroin, and it's a lot of beatnik hipsters that get together and they help him get off of heroin by doing a lot of writing and soul searching and things like that. And then there's my other book that's out right now is called Can You Keep a Secret? And that is about a shy, introverted guy who spends all of his time at bars drinking crappy beer and listening to people tell each other secrets, and then he would make up stories about them in their head up until he meets a girl who's an alcoholic sex addict with multiple personalities, and it sort of throws his world into I
want to read both of those, but I definitely want to read that one. Where do I have another I'm one. Not even kidding.
Both of those are on Amazon. Can You Keep a Secret by Matt Wright. Don't get the one by Sophie Kinsella, because that's not me. And Dear Jack, Diary of an Addict. Both of those are available on Amazon. And then I have another one coming out that is called Purple Jasmine. Which
you haven't decided yet, or you just forgot?
I forgot. My editors had it for like 2 years. And that's going to be coming out, I'm hoping, by Christmas. We will find out more later. We're going Christmas. But that one's going to be released. That one's going to be an NFT release. And yeah, we're going to be doing that on Web3 and on the blockchain. I'm going to be doing that with a company.
I'm eliminated from that. I have no idea how to do any of those.
I don't either, but I work with a company that does it. So
I'm 51, bro. I can't. You're lucky I figured out how to operate StreamYard.
Well, yeah. So yeah, you got those coming out there. And real quick, if you are a libertarian out there and you enjoy writing or making music, doing any of that, put your content out. Put it out. Let people read it, even if you don't write specifically libertarian things. A lot of the stuff that I write, a lot of the fiction that I write isn't specifically libertarian, but I throw in libertarian ideals throughout.
It's hard not to.
It is. It's real hard not to. When I try to do something really overtly libertarian, it never works out. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to continue writing what I want and just pepper it. But put it out, because if you get that out there and you have people reading it, you are changing minds here and there, because people will begin to see that.
There is a place for creativity and entrepreneurship within a libertarian movement that does not exist anymore within the more leftist Democrat side, or even supposedly, I call them normicons within the conservative Republicans. There's just no creativity anymore, and it's stifling. So, Matt, I cannot thank you enough for your time. I want you to go and get out of here, since I did waste 45 minutes of your time. I hope you got somewhere with your game, by the way.
Oh no, I lost terribly. lost terribly right there at the end.
That's the story of my life, bro. I show up and everybody loses. So I
But hey,
really appreciate your time.
I had a great time. I appreciate it, and I am certain we will talk again at some point.
No, absolutely. If you ever need somebody to fill in for Spike, yeah, probably not me. So I'm not that good. So I appreciate your time, and I will. You get out of here, and I'll close up shop. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have a good one.
You too. Hey, ladies and gents, yeah, I use that terminology. I will continue to use that terminology. I don't care how you identify. Matt and Spike have a great show. Jason is on their network as well. I would encourage you to go over there and check it out. I can't tell you enough about the depth of their content. And as you saw, it's not dry. It's not. I think people sometimes get this idea that conversations like this have to be boring. They have to be dry. But if you're passionate about your ideology, if you're passionate about your socio-cultural, socio-political, cultural political views, you should be able to have a conversation about it and enjoy it, and compel people to think. And that's what I really wish that more people would see. Look, people, we're being disenfranchised. I had Charles Neal commenting in here earlier, and our initial connection with one another goes back actually quite a ways. But when it comes to the political conversations, it goes back pretty much to the beginning of my channel and Chaz's interactions with someone that I know. And it wasn't that there was some hostility there, but we've both come to a place where we are engaging and operating on the idea that we can come to a common ground, not a middle ground. I hate the middle ground because it's mushy and it sucks you down. But we can come to a common ground, a common understanding of those things that are important to us, which is liberty and freedom and the pursuit of life and the pursuit of happiness, and find those places where we agree. Spike said this at his speech during the Libertarian National Convention. He said it to the more left-leaning side of the Libertarian Party, and he said it to the right-leaning Mises Caucus. Whichever one of you wins, you have a duty to represent your people and find out what your opponents believe and represent them. And I'm paraphrasing what Spike said, but his speech was phenomenal. That's where we need to be. That's exactly where we need to be, and it's exactly what we need to have going on. And that's why I'm doing this series. That's why I'm reaching out to guys like Travis Bull Johnson and others. And I will continue to have on other libertarians. We're working on bringing on people from the Libertarian Party leadership now. And there are other libertarians I'm going to be reaching out to. I'm hoping that I can pull Scott Horton in. He's a libertarian, and he heads up the anti-war, antiwar.com. It's an organization. It's not a bunch of hippie peaceniks. It's people who are against American interventionism. I would love to have him on because he has some really important things that I think that allegedly conservative Republicans need to stop and think about, because it's the position that they should be taking is the position that Scott Horton takes. And if you don't know who Scott is, go look him up and listen to his debate with Bill Kristol at the Soho Forum. Scott destroyed Bill Kristol. And if you're a conservative, I know you know who Bill Kristol is. He's supposed to be the one guy that nobody can defeat in a debate, and Scott just destroyed him. Ironically, the anti-war guy destroyed somebody in a debate. But anyway, I can't encourage you enough to check out Muddied Waters, to listen to their content, listen to Matt's show, Writer's Block. It's phenomenal content. Listen to him and Spike, the Muddy Waters of Freedom show. Listen to Mr. Bearded American, Jason. You guys saw him on the show last Friday. And if there's something you want me to talk about, if there's questions that you would like me to ask of my libertarian guest, ask me, because I'll address them. I absolutely will. I'm going to ask you guys once again, please help me keep my content going. This is not cheap. It's not easy for me to continue to do this, as you guys know. And I know I sound like I'm asking you guys to go over to Subscribestar. Hit the super thank button if you're watching this on playback on YouTube. I appreciate those things. Everything that you guys do, whether it be a super chat or a super thanks or subscribing to me on Subscribestar, that money goes back into me keeping this going. I gave up a career because I refused to back down. And that's why I respect the people that I have on this show. Because they're like me. They refuse to back down. The Matts, the Spikes, the Bulls, the Erics, the Jasons, and the other guests that I've had on some of my other series. That's how important this is to me. I'm not going to back down, and I'm not going away. And there are times I feel like it, to be honest with you. So thanks for watching. Thanks for paying attention. Thanks for listening. And if you're watching this on playback, hit the like button, hit the share button, keep this content going out, and go over and check out Muddied Waters, and check out my other libertarian guests and my other guests, quite frankly. They're worth your time and they're worth your support. So as always, until next time, sic semper tyrannis.
We are go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.